From the very dawn of civilization, a wonderful phenomenon takes place every year. But an exception with migratory birds is that they migrate back to their original habitat. The human race, over the centuries, have migrated from one country to another to find a new place to settle down and build a home. In Africa, oil-rich Sudan has been a shelter for people from Chad, Ethiopia, and Uganda. The 90s have witnessed continuous famine and war that have resulted in 2 million refugees in Somalia. Thousands of people are leaving Bosnia. In Hong Kong, the migrants are a majority. So, illegal migration of the infiltrators is a worldwide phenomenon. India is not an exception and is not free from these illegal migrants or infiltrators. Since 1970 onwards, the situation in border districts has become a major nuisance, where a heavy onslaught of infiltrators has become a regular event. And now, metropolitan cities are being invaded. Delhi, the rush and hubbub of the multitude in the fort's foyer. But what usually escapes the visitor's attention is the thin black strip of human settlements bordering the rivers. There lives a group of people bearing the brunt of uncertainty, which loomed large ever since they set foot in this land. They are around us and among us as rickshaw pullers, rag pickers, frequenting residential premises, washerwoman, and the ceremonial carriers of our marriage parties. They are the Bangladeshis. A visit to one of the Bangladeshi settlements is like a journey to the world of stark, malicious realities. The dirt flowing through the settlement has the added stink of political malice, national and international. And for the settlers, the struggle for survival in these unhealthy, unhygienic surroundings is nothing more than the predicament of being a poor Bangladeshi in India. Migration out of compulsion on a permanent or temporary basis has always been a survival strategy. Necessitating such an uprooting may not culminate into a response fit for the ready-made human setup. Baghdad. The people waiting in the afternoon sun for a bus at Helencha Bazaar were almost a crowd. But none of the crowd is an Indian. To the many who have arrived in search of an El Dorado on this side of the border, their dreams may or may not come true. But for the local people, they are a dream come true. Thanks to them, a parallel economy now thrives in this part of the district. There, the lineman accosts the infiltrator at the border and then hands him over to the ghatman. This ghatman guides him across the border. On crossing the border, the Bangladesh rifles take money after a careful count of the heads. Similarly, people from Bangladesh enter India. The system is the same, only the BDR is substituted by the Border Security Force. The groups which enter India are families with children and women. Some of the most popular routes into India are through the 5 points along the Bongaon-Bagda road. It requires passengers to cross over the region's 2 rivers, Kodla and Kobadakko. And the villagers who ply boats charge every passenger 10 rupees for the 5-kilometer journey. If the boatman profits from the border crossing, so do the men who operate buses on their roads. The criminals, of course, thrive on smuggling. The hotels are makeshift huts created a few years ago and are named after their owners. The menus are simple Bengali affair. But business is roaring for all the eateries, which have an exclusively Bangladeshi clientele. Apart from the eateries, there are a few lodges along the Bongaon-Bagda road, which put a roof over their heads at night. Along the border villages, there are so-called linemen or ghatmen who are controlled by the bossman. Their agents are spread throughout the Jaintipur market. It is not very hard to hunt out these agents. Through Bongaon border, one has to simply reach the bus station or the bazaar. These agents do not take risks, but they instantly hunt out the new faces. Once the client agrees, he is given a slip of paper. He takes a slip of paper and travels to Jaintipur Bazaar. For the local crime-shy villager, this entry of a passenger, his hunger and his need for shelter are what bring home the bacon. But there are some more difficult routes. The erosion on the banks of the Ganga in the Murshidabad district is now being used to advantage by the infiltrators. The area near Dhulian and Jalangi, severely affected by erosion, offers excellent opportunities to come over without raising the suspicion amongst the police and the local people in some of the districts in North Bengal. The method adopted is staggering in its simplicity. Families cross the Ganga and put up in makeshift shanties and tents on the riverbank, pretending to be victims of flood and erosion which have claimed their homes. They move further on to acquaint themselves with the law of the land. A few weeks more in Murshidabad and they head to where they have decided to settle. They buy land and cattle with the money they have got by selling off their properties in Bangladesh. While adults look for employment opportunity and cultivate land, the young infiltrators from Bangladesh have adopted a more devious way of entering illegally. They enter border schools, madrasas, that provide the training for certificates. A school-leaving certificate ensures that the infiltrating youth not only gets a ration card, but a claim to citizenship. The next step towards entering West Bengal is to get included in the voters' list. All political parties are guilty of allowing this to happen. In a rundown restaurant opposite the Bungaon station, one comes across a boy. He's a Bangladeshi and came looking for a job just 2 weeks ago.
The problem of Bangladeshi infiltration in India is of a very great magnitude, which is affecting not only the overstretched economy of our country, but also it is affecting indirectly, to a great extent, the security scenario. Estimate about the total infiltration is not or cannot be given an accurate figure, but what can be gauged on some palpable evidence that all over India the total migration can lead to a number of about 10 million, that is about 1 crore.
You ought to see the railway colony in Bungaon. It is full of people from Bangladesh who have come over between 1971 and now. They all have ration cards and feature in the voters' list. Travelers from Bangladesh on a month's visit establish contact with their relatives. And a few days before the visas expire, they go to the checkpost and get documents stamped, suggesting that they have gone out of the country. Passports are destroyed, and the travelers become settlers. The infiltrators are being categorized into 3 types by the administration. Those who have come in over the past decade or more and are settled good and proper. The second category are those who entered 3 or 4 years ago and are still floundering, unable to strike roots. The last types are the infiltrators who have just sneaked in. These people are the ones without relatives, contacts, and little money to bribe their way. These last types are the ones who are pushed back. To be able to detect and deport the infiltrators, public support is necessary. People in the state need to be made aware of the likely repercussions of infiltration. The BJP feels strongly that Muslims from neighboring countries have been coming over as a deliberate demographic move. Conceived and nursed by the pan-Islamic movement and financed by the petrodollars. That fundamentalists are active in some border districts of the state is evident. Recently it has been observed that ISI had been changing its game plan as it was facing acute dearth of fresh recruits. The Bangladeshis living in shanty colonies are being exploited by the ISI agents. Some of the Bangladeshis were even pushed by Pakistan across the line of control into the Jammu region. The migrants could become a source for a tailor-made army for ISI to fulfill its sinister design of fomenting trouble in the country.
This infiltration problem should be checked, should be combated properly. Then this ISI problem can be faced very easily, and already so far Kandahar episode is concerned, our central government has taken a tremendous steps, and they have already arrested a few positive peoples who are very much connected with this hijacking matter. And also this time the state home minister Buddhadev Bhattacharya, he has also accepted that now the ISI activities in West Bengal is a dangerous level.
The massive immigration of Bangladeshis and earlier of East Pakistanis into India has been an issue. The day Sir Ratcliffe drew the artificial and unenforceable boundary dividing the subcontinent into India and Pakistan in 1947. Owing to the inherent fallacy of partition, economic and social interaction across the border between India and Pakistan and between India and Bangladesh remained as before. As a result, many people have settled down on the Indian side of the border as a matter of course. The creation of Bangladesh in 1971 indeed boosted the process. More so, the refugee problem is an offshoot of the conflict between the tribals and the Bangladesh government. The tribals, mainly Chakmas, have been fighting against the systematic settlement of Bengalis in the region, which completely changed the demographic complexion. This settlement of people caused a major ethnic and religious problem, as the settlers were Muslims and the tribals were mainly Buddhists. The tribals' demand for the restoration of the earlier position, ban on non-tribal influx, and regional autonomy for the area were rejected, and the Dhaka government continued to encourage settlements. The 1981 census revealed that in the 8 border districts of West Bengal, the population grew at over 60% between 1971 and 1981. It was revealed by the West Bengal government that at least 4 lakh passport holders from Bangladesh had disappeared into the Indian community without any trace.
That is all along this around 4,800 kilometers border, the scouts are operating on both sides. They collect these migrants, then push them through the border, which is not only porous, but sometimes it is not even properly demarcated.
The magnitude of the problem came into sharp focus when in 1980 the Election Commission released the electoral list for the state. The All Awami Students' Union, who had already launched an agitation against these unauthorized settlers, intensified its stir. Considering the impracticality of the ASU demand that all foreigners who had arrived in India after 1951 must be evicted, it was conceded that March 25, 1957 would be the cut-off point. But identification of the illegal immigrants was almost impossible. Even after 13 years, there is little evidence of the illegal foreigner being actually identified and repatriated. Till August 1993, the progress in the detection of illegal migrants, of those who enter Assam on or after March 25, 1971, was as follows. The initial census data tended to suggest that the foreigners' issue had been exaggerated. The then Chief Minister, Hiteshwar Saikia, had a strong following among the Muslims. Saikia refuted the statement by the Union Home Minister, Mr. S.B. Chavan, that illegal immigration continued unabated in his state. In early 1996, when the Assam Gana Parishad returned to power, the foreigners' issue surfaced again. Their avowed criticism of granting voting rights to 6,70,000 foreigners was enough indication of the pot still boiling. The Bodo threat to the Muslim settlers added an element of violence. Then came the demand by the Prafulla Kumar Mahanta-led AGP, according to which the onus of proving that one was not a foreigner was on the accused. It was not an easy political decision for Mahanta to stick to his guns. The controversy found its reverberations in national politics. All supporters of the UF government were opposed to any change in the situation. There was hardly any justification for the Devegowda government to alter the legal position on the detection of illegal foreigners. Hence, the demand got diluted under political compulsions as of now.
The moment of Assam was concluded or ended up signing an agreement with the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi at that time. The problem is still on or going on. We are trying our level best to stop the infiltration. And now the whole thing is dependent upon the central government, because at the time of the deportation of the foreign nationals, the Bangladesh, they raised some objection. Therefore, we also ask the central government to take up these issues with Bangladesh. All infiltrators are not responsible for it, because you know that ISI activities or fundamental activities are increases there due to the influence from Pakistan or other foreign countries. And from our side, we are trying to prevent it. Let us see.
The dangerous consequences of large-scale illegal migration from Bangladesh for both Assam and more for the nation need to be stressed. The silent, invidious demographic invasion of Assam may result in the loss of the geostrategically vital districts of Lower Assam. The rapid growth of international Islamic foundation may provide the driving force of this demand. In this context, it is pertinent to note that Bangladesh has adopted a republican state for the people, in which the principal religion is Islam. Political parties, it seems, are underplaying the grave importance of this problem and have been viewing it as something affecting only the Assamese people. Thus, an issue of great concern for national security has been made into a partisan affair and a matter of vote bank.
Infiltration has been going on since the early 60s. It started because our own politicians encouraged infiltration because they wanted the vote banks. They wanted easy ways of winning elections. And then a lot of contractors wanted cheap labor. So infiltration has been encouraged over the years. In the beginning, there might have been a question of stopping all this with the help of identity cards, and we might even have thought of work permits at that point of time. But today, it's too late for all that, because those who have come in insist on buying land and on registering themselves as Indian citizens. And they are not going to declare themselves as having remained here illegally as foreigners to collect their work permits now. So work permits will go to the fresh batch of illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. It will only aggravate the problem. In Assam, the situation has been made more complicated than it need have been by the simple fact of having a separate immigration law for just one state. You have the Foreigners Act of 1946 governing immigration for the rest of the country. And for Assam alone, you have the Illegal Migrant Determination by Tribunals Act of 1983, called the IMDT Act for short. Even as things are now, Assam bears responsibility for about 26% of its population, which are not indigenous Indians or people of the state, but are foreign nationals, for whom the state has no moral or constitutional responsibility. If India feels very generous, then I think one solution could be to distribute all these people over all the states of the country, instead of expecting just one or two states to take on such a burden.
There already exists a large Bengali settlement in Ahmedabad.
শেখ জাকির হোসেন। আমি এখন সোনারি কাজ করি, মানে এখন আমি দেখাশোনা করি এখন। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, আমার সব দেশের লোক, আশেপাশের লোক, শালা আছে, ভাগনা আছে, ভাইপো আছে। এই তো 1 বছর 1.5 বছর 2 বছর করে এসছে। হ্যাঁ আমি নিয়ে এসছি সব। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ কাজ শিখেছি, আমিই কাজ শিখেছি। হ্যাঁ সব দেশের দিয়ে থাকে। আমার এখানে খালি এখানে ফ্যামিলি থাকে, দাদা থাকে আর দাদার ফ্যামিলি থাকে, আছে বাচ্চারা থাকে। হ্যাঁ বাবা মা সব দেশে। হবে 25-30 হাজার হবে।
For some years now, Rajasthan and Gujarat borders have been used by Bangladeshis to infiltrate into Pakistan. Thanks to the langar, free lodging and boarding facilities at Haji Pir in the Kutch district and Dargah Sharif at Ajmer. They assemble at such langars before attempting to cross over to Pakistan. The langar at Dargah was a favorite until recently, but after border security was tightened, the Bangladeshi lot have been overcautious. But all the more, it has never stopped them from being a permanent fixture in and around the Dargah premises. Not all of them are beggars. Most of them have taken up working for the khadims of Dargah, washing floors in their guest houses for a paltry sum of 40 rupees a day, while their wives are exploited by the dominating khadims.
झुगड़ी में थाके कोई झुगड़ी আছে না ওই জায়গা झुगड़ी থাকে कोई मकान किराए করে থাকে সিলট মাল্লা থাকে সিস্তা খানে থাকে
তো ওরা কি করে
ওরা कोई मजदूर করে সোনা ওঠার কাজ করে
ওরা সব কোথা থেকে এসেছে
কাজের বাতি বিয়ের বাতি হচ্ছে বাতিতে যায়
বাতিতেও যায়
হ্যাঁ বাতিতে যায়
এখানে শাদী হয়
হ্যাঁ বারবার শাদী হয় হিন্দু के शादी হয় তো বাতি উঠাতে যায়
তার ওরা কত ওখানে কত লোক ওরা কোথা থেকে এসেছে সব ইন্দরকোটে যারা থাকে ওখানে বললে যে
বিহার না বিহারি বাংলাদেশি অনেক আছে বাংলাদেশি
চিটাগাঙ্গের অনেক লোক আছে কত লোক হবে
To single out one Muhammad Bahadur. When I was in Bangladesh, I used to eat bhat, but here I have to do with roti. Even roti raises your expenses. Most of my countrymen here are fakirs, but I make my living through hard work. I have even voted here. Right next to the Dargah, a way goes up to Badbao and Katanbao, where hordes of Bangladeshis are living amongst the Bengali and Bihari Muslims. The end of these areas, a mountain road leads to Taragarh Fort, swarming with Bangladeshis. We meet a young lad in his late 20s. I came to India to make some money. Someday I will go back home and set up a restaurant there. I haven't spoken to my family for the last 7 months. By mixing the issue with the rising population of Muslims, these political forces have argued that growth is attributed to Muslims' disregard for the family planning measure. Analyzing the 1981 census data pertaining to the border state, it is concluded that the illegal migration from Bangladesh is a demographic reality.
This has a debilitating effect on West Bengal's economy, both in terms of population Because you might notice that the census figures have revealed that the population in the border districts of West Bengal is 20% more than South Bengal districts. What it essentially means is if you go to South Bengal and you take a census, the figures won't tally with the North Bengal, say Nodia onwards, which is not North Bengal though, Nodia up to Murshidabad, right up to Dinajpur. So there's a 20% increase, and that doesn't gel. It doesn't gel, which means people are coming over this side. That takes care of the demographic changes, and that's been happening ever since the partition of Bengal.
In Maharashtra, the controversy is most acute, and the government has raised the issue of Bangladeshi infiltrators. Between 1985 and 91, the government could barely deport 4,246 of the suspected 1 lakh Bangladeshis. In 1994, the controversy once again surfaced when the government of Maharashtra responded to a circular of the Election Commission. In response to this, the State Cabinet approved a list of areas spread over 44 of the 72 police stations and chose the police instead of the Revenue Department to conduct the verification. The controversy assumed serious political proportions when Maharashtra government deleted the names of 42,000 people from the voters' list.
আমার নাম শামসুন নাহার।
আপনার নাম? আমার নাম বাদশা মিয়া। আপনার? আমার নাম নূর মোহাম্মদ। আপনারা যে এখানে আছেন কি কাজ করেন?
দর্জি কাজ করি।
আমি টেলারিং কাজ করি। আচ্ছা আচ্ছা। আপনি? দোকানদার পাথরের দোকানদার আছে। এখানে কোনো সমস্যা আছে?
সমস্যা তো থাকবে।
যেমন
এই ধরেন মনে করেন অন্য অন্য এলাকায় গেলে আমাদেরকে চোর বলে।
আচ্ছা। আর তাছাড়া আর কোনো সমস্যা আছে?
এই যে ঘরদুয়ার বানাইছিলাম একবার তো জুগি টুকি সব ভাঙে চুরে দিচ্ছে। অন্য আবার সার্ভে হইতে আছে, ওই যে ওইদিকে জুগি আছে, জুগি করা ওরা
ভেঙে দিচ্ছে কেন? এইটাই ভাঙা দিচ্ছে। কেন ভাঙছে? কেন কি বলে ভাঙছে?
বাঙালি বাংলাদেশের জায়গায় দিবে।
পুলিশদের অত্যাচার আছে এখানে?
না, ওরকম কোনো অত্যাচার নেই, ওরকম কোনো অত্যাচার নেই।
এখানে এসে ভেঙে নিয়ে তুলে নিয়ে যাচ্ছে কারা?
এটা পাটিয়ালারা করতেছে, হয়তো আমরা যতটা বুঝি আর কি মনে হয় পাটিয়ালারা করতেছে, তাও আমরা জানি না। তাও ঠিক বলতে পারি না কোন পার্টি। এখন পার্টি তো কতই আছে, কোন পার্টিরা করছে। সরকার বলতেছে পাটিয়ালারা করে, পাটিয়ালারা বলতেছে না সরকার করাচ্ছে। এই তো এই মুহূর্তে অসুবিধা মানে ওখানটায় সার্ভাই হয়ে গেছে, ওই যুগের ওখানটায় ওই সার্ভাই দেখা সব লোক রাত্রের দিকে অনেকে পালাই চলে গেছে ধরে। মানে পুলিশ আসবে,
মনে করছে এইবার ধরে নিয়ে যাবো,
পুলিশ আসবে রাত্রবেলা উঠাই নিয়ে যাবে, এই জন্য ঘর বাড়ি ছেড়ে মানুষ চলে গেছে।
আর নিয়ে ওইবারে রাখছে পাগলখানার ভিতরে, বুঝলেন? পাগলখানার 17 দিন পর্যন্ত রাখতে আসে, এরপরে বাংলাদেশে রাতে রাতে ভিতরে নিয়ে পার করছে, রাতের অন্ধকারে। আমরা তো ভোট দিতেছি
ভোটার, তারপর আমাদের উপরে এরকম হচ্ছে।
हमारा ऊपर तो कोई जुल्म ही ना हो, कोई पुलिस का कोई किसी का जुल्म ही ना करे हमारा ऊपर।
Working on Muhammad Ali Road as a butcher for the last 12 years, despite being an Indian, he is time and again labelled Bangladeshi. His only proof, the school certificate from the district, has been torn by the police as it was considered invalid. Farid Nurani married a Bangladeshi. He could not imagine that his marital life would turn into a nightmare. In the year 1998, 582 Bangladeshis were deported, 96 of them in just 2 days in July. Either by design or providence, their journey was intercepted by the forward bloc, which has its strongest political base in districts with significant concentrations of Bangladeshi immigrants. Then came the Calcutta High Court stay on deportation, when 3 of the deportees produced evidence to show they were residents of West Bengal. The controversy made major political parties raise the issue of Bengali persecution. In the 1996 general election, the BJP made it one of their major poll planks and campaigned vigorously in the border towns of West Bengal. Whenever any deportation of illegal Bangladeshis has been attempted, it has been alleged that they were West Bengal Muslims.
As I see that 2 types of persons come.
Whenever any deportation of illegal Bangladeshis has been attempted, it has been alleged that they were West Bengal Muslims.
As I see that 2 types of persons coming. One, those cross the border because of persecution socially and politically. And most of them are non-Muslims. Others are, some small number is being infiltrated by design. But quite a big number is crossing the border in search of food and shelter. Even then, they are creating a lot of problems in Bengal, in Assam, even in Tripura. And some of them, government tried to send them back. But a huge cry has been made, raised by so many persons, the so-called secular forces, including West Bengal government. You'll recall that some time ago, maybe last year, some persons were picked up in Bombay and they were trying to be sent back. And even the Bengal government came to their rescue.
Bangladesh nationals lodged in different West Bengal jails are being forced to undergo illegal detention, following reluctance of the Bangladesh government to take back the infiltrators. But in most cases, the jail authorities are being forced to keep them confined in prison, even after prosecution is over. This is because repatriation is an official process and depends entirely on the approval of the country where they are to be sent. The alternative is to push back the arrested Bangladeshi nationals. This alternative mode has also become restricted following vigilance by Bangladesh Rifles. Bangladeshi people are told to mount a watch and not allow any pushback by Indian security forces. To prevent the infiltration of Bangladeshi nationals, the government of India has taken up a project for the construction of roads and fences along the India-Bangladesh border in Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Tripura and West Bengal. The problem of Bangladesh immigrants is a human issue. No amount of deportation or border fencing can solve it. All demographers agree that migrations of people from poorer regions to neighboring less poorer ones are as inevitable as water seeking its own level. Besides, there are ecological and environmental dimensions.
তোমার কি অন্যরকম লাগে এরকম বাংলাদেশ আর ভারতবর্ষের মধ্যখানে যে তুমি বসে আছো তোমার কেমন লাগে?
ভালো লাগে।
ভালো লাগে? তুমি তোমার ভোট আছে তোমার? আছে। কোন দেশে ভোট দাও?
ইন্ডিয়াতে ভোট দেয়।
আর বাংলাদেশে?
বাংলাদেশে দেয়।
বাংলাদেশেও দেয়।
These people must be divested of voting rights, but may even be allowed civic rights at the local level. One long-term solution could be that the development strategies of India and Bangladesh are coordinated. Since the Bangladeshi immigration is largely from particular districts, could it be possible that some developmental aid is given to these districts by India or other donor countries? In the final analysis, the problem of refugees and migrants raises many questions.
We must find out a solution to this large-scale infiltration, because the problem, as I said, is of immense magnitude.
It can be solved. They have got to show that they cannot carry on this activity. And moreover, as I would not hesitate to say, the local persons, Indians belong to any community, should be detected also, because without their support, it's very difficult for any foreigner to stay.
Once you have the same kind of instructions given to the BSF as for the border with Pakistan, once you can reduce the corruption of officials dealing with immigration, I think we will partially solve the problem. But a very important aspect of the problem is to disfranchise those foreign nationals who have made their way into the electoral rolls also, because that is one way of at least ensuring that your political power does not go into the hands of foreigners.
With the help of both the government, central government and the government of Bangladesh also, it will be easy to solve the problem. Otherwise, it will be difficult.
The political parties know about it, the government knows about it, the media knows about it. Media writes about it. But it's taken a long time for the left-hand government in West Bengal to realize and accept that there is influx and infiltration, and the number of people coming in are quite high, and in terms of incidence is increasing. And after a long time, when Jyoti Babu did admit it at a press conference that was being held in Taj Bengal recently, about a year or so ago, this question was posed to Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. So initially she feigned ignorance, and she said, no, as far as my government is concerned, there is no infiltration. So when the media sort of, kept harping on the question, she said, if there is infiltration, and since Mr. Basu was raising the point, I'll look into it. And that was that. So there is no basic effort on either the part of the Indian government or the West Bengal government, or for that matter Bangladesh, to see what exactly the problem is.
An international consensus is emerging that no government is obliged to admit migrants, that migration is an individual national policy. If immigration is not a basic human right, then each country must weigh conflicting claims and consider the consequences of alternative policies for their citizens. Migration and refugee issues cannot simply be reduced to moral questions, but neither are they solely questions of national sovereignty in which moral judgments play no role. On crossing the border, the Bangladesh rifles take money after a careful count of the heads. Similarly, people from Bangladesh enter India. The system is the same, only the BDR is substituted by the Border Security Force. The groups which enter India are families with children and women. Some of the most popular routes into India are through the 5 points along the Bongaon-Bagda road. It requires passengers to cross over the region's 2 rivers, Kodla and Kobadakko. And the villagers who ply boats charge every passenger 10 rupees for the 5-kilometer journey. If the boatman profits from the border crossing, so do the men who operate buses on their roads. The criminals, of course, thrive on smuggling. The hotels are makeshift huts created a few years ago and are named after their owners. The menus are simple Bengali affair. But business is roaring for all the eateries. From the very dawn of civilization, a wonderful phenomenon takes place every year. But an exception with migratory birds is that they migrate back to their original habitat. The human race, over the centuries, have migrated from one country to another to find a new place to settle down and build a home. In Africa, oil-rich Sudan has been a shelter for people from Chad, Ethiopia, and Uganda. The 90s have witnessed continuous famine and war that have resulted in 2 million refugees in Somalia. Thousands of people are leaving Bosnia. In Hong Kong, the migrants are a majority. Unhygienic surroundings is nothing more than the predicament of being a poor Bangladeshi in India. Migration out of compulsion on a permanent or temporary basis has always been a survival strategy. Necessitating such an uprooting may not culminate into a response fit for the ready-made human setup. Baghdad. The people waiting in the afternoon sun for a bus at Helencha Bazaar were almost a crowd. But none of the crowd is an Indian. To the many who have arrived in search of an El Dorado on this side of the border, their dreams may or may not come true. But for the local people, they are a dream come true. Thanks to them, a parallel economy now thrives in this part of the district. There, the lineman accosts the infiltrator at the border and then hands him over to the ghatman. This ghatman guides him across the border. There lives a group of people bearing the brunt of uncertainty, which loomed large ever since they set foot in this land. They are around us and among us as rickshaw pullers, rag pickers, frequenting residential premises, washerwoman, and the ceremonial carriers of our marriage parties. They are the Bangladeshis. A visit to one of the Bangladeshi settlements is like a journey to the world of stark, malicious realities. The dirt flowing through the settlement has the added stink of political malice, national and international. And for the settlers, the struggle for survival in these unhealthy. So, illegal migration of the infiltrators is a worldwide phenomenon. India is not an exception and is not free from these illegal migrants or infiltrators. Since 1970 onwards, the situation in border districts has become a major nuisance, where a heavy onslaught of infiltrators has become a regular event. And now, metropolitan cities are being invaded. Delhi, the rush and hubbub of the multitude in the fort's foreyard. But what usually escapes the visitor's attention is the thin black strip of human settlements bordering the rivers.